Diego Velazquez is one of the most celebrated painters of all time. His work Las Meninas, an enigmatic portrait of the Spanish royal family, has captivated viewers since its creation in 1656. Its layered composition creates a complex view of the Infanta Margaret Teresa, the painter himself, and the Spanish monarchs King Philip IV and Mariana of Austria. Art lovers for centuries have had questions about the unusual placements of the subjects and the other details in the painting, such as, what is the real subject of the painting? The Infanta, the royal couple depicted in the mirror, or the artist himself who is painting them? Why is the painting named after the attendants and not after any of the royal family members depicted here, or the artist who occupies a large section of the painting? Why include this man who is walking out of the scene? The debate has continued for centuries. The mysterious nature of this painting has inspired me to research two lesser-known works by the Spanish Baroque master, which are also masterpieces in their own right. Christ in the House of Martha and Mary and Las Hilanderas, or the Spinners, are from different periods in Velazquez's career and also feature some of the same mysterious compositional tropes he uses in Las Meninas. We will look at how he uses these unusual compositional techniques to add ambiguity to his paintings, leading to much richer possibilities of interpretation of the subjects he depicts. Christ in the House of Martha and Mary was created early in Velazquez's career in 1618. He had recently completed his apprenticeship with Francisco Pacheco and was working in the genre of the bodegón, paintings of kitchen scenes which depicted simple peasant life. Here's another example of a bodegón from this same period, Old Women Frying Eggs. This painting, however, expanded on this vocabulary and was considered a bodegón a lo divino, a painting which depicted sacred subjects in the vocabulary of this humble genre. The painting shows a view of an elderly woman and a young woman in a room with a small opening in the upper right of the wall behind them, showing the adjoining room. The scene in the opening appears to be an illustration of the biblical story of Christ visiting the home of Martha and Mary from Luke 10:13-42. In this story, Christ visits the home of the two sisters. Mary sits at the feet of Christ and receives his teaching while Martha toils in the kitchen preparing a meal. When she complains to Christ that her sister didn't help her, he admonishes her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." With the two women in the foreground, it is not entirely clear who is who, and therefore the interpretation of the painting is ambiguous. It seems at first glance that the two women in the background speaking to Christ are Martha and Mary, with Christ gesturing at Martha as he speaks the lesson to her. The woman in the foreground, however, is visibly upset and expresses the anger and frustration felt by Martha in the story. Is it possible that the smaller standing woman in the corner is just some other incidental figure, and the actual Martha is the figure in the foreground? Who is the old woman speaking to the real Martha then, and what is she saying? The old woman's expression is not clear, and she could either be scolding her for her discontentedness or whispering words of encouragement. If the small women in the corner are the true figures in the story, then why is the woman in the foreground looking so troubled? And again, what is the old woman whispering to her? Like Las Meninas, interpretations of this piece abound. One thing is certain, however, the virtuosity of Velazquez's skill adds to the mysteriousness of the atmosphere, as the depictions of the characters are so true to life that it is clear that they are precise likenesses of real people. The extreme realism and detail is described by some historians with the term conceptismo, an atmosphere of truth resulting from Velazquez's masterful depiction of his subjects. For example, the old woman on the left is almost certainly the same person in Velazquez's painting Old Woman Cooking Eggs, also from the year 1618. Their similarities are unmistakable. Las Hilanderas, or The Spinners, is a much later work, created in 1657. This piece features another scene within a scene, the kind of layered composition that make Las Meninas and Christ in the House of Martha and Mary so interesting. Las Hilanderas shows the Greek myth of Arachne, a skilled weaver whose hubris led her to be changed into a spider by the goddess Athena after a contest between the two of them. In this depiction, the scene takes place in a real location in Velazquez's contemporary Madrid, the Santa Isabel Royal Tapestry Factory. The characters are dressed in the customary fashion of his time. Similarly to the previous painting we discussed, the action of the painting is relegated to the far background, where the helmeted goddess curses Arachne for her pride. Her work hangs against the back wall facing the viewer. In the foreground, a yarn spinner's workshop is depicted in glistening detail. The women's complicated postures laboring over their craft, the tufts of wool spread around the floor, and the whirring movement of the spinning wheel are shown with stunning realism. Again, the unusual layering of action in the composition raises questions in the artwork, the principal question being, what is the significance of putting the main action of the painting in the very back? And once again, different interpretations abound as a result of the ambiguous choices of the artist. In one interpretation, the painting is actually showing different scenes from the story itself. In the foreground of the painting, an old woman runs the spinning wheel on the left while a young woman winds the spun wool into a skein. Some see this as a depiction of the actual contest taking place between Athena and Arachne, with the next stage of the contest culminating in the background. In yet another interpretation, the painting can also be seen as a meditation on painting itself. The tapestry woven by Arachne in the far background is an exact copy of Titian's painting The Rape of Europa, which was part of the royal collection at that time. Velazquez was known to be a great student of Venetian painting and held up Titian as an idol. By including Titian's work as the product of the gifted Arachne, Velazquez asserts that Titian paints like a god. Athena's rage toward Arachne in the myth was just as much a result of the fact that Arachne's work was much greater than the goddesses. Some have carried this interpretation even further, speculating that Velazquez is competing with his idol Titian with his masterful depiction of the spinner's workshop in the foreground. The rendering of the movement of the spinning wheels and the women at work in this piece is considered a great contribution to the history of painting. By matching his own work at the height of his powers with that of his idol, Velazquez positions himself as competing with Titian, his own god of painting.